Let's go ahead and get started. This is Travis Witherspoon from Carter Cow Capital, helping you fight for your financial freedom throughout the Forex market and any other trading market. This is a 9 p.m. Trade with Travis session. I hope everybody's doing very well. Hopefully, everybody end up having a pretty good day of trading today. I got me and my little one with me today, so I'm actually going to end up being off the screen um, for much of the day or most of the session when it comes down to this. Obviously, to be able to make sure that she's not getting a lot of light in front of her face, and hopefully be able to get her to go to sleep. But with that being said, um, not a lot of movement. The market ended up consolidating a little bit today. Remember, anytime that you have a Thursday before a non-farm payroll, typically you're not going to end up having that much movement anyway. So we end up talking about that plus much more. So let's go ahead and get into it. Got to go through the disclaimer first, and then after that, we'll kind of jump into everything. Uh-oh. 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 There you go. There you go, partner. There you go, baby girl. All right, so here we go. I'm not a CTA, so I'm not going to tell you whether to buy or to sell. What I'm going to do is teach you education, and from that education, you can be able to make your own informed decision. Now, understand that trading involves risk. It involves risk of being able to make money. Also involves risk of being able to lose money. So please keep that in mind and understand that past performance is not indicative of future results, which means that if you end up making money yesterday, not promised that you can end up making money today. So with that being said, um, economic calendar, very simple. Really wasn't much of anything to be able to take a look at or anything to be excited about for its overall movement today. Uh, well, Germany ended up having retail sales. The numbers were better. The numbers were way better than expected, but we'll see how that actually ended up making the market move. And then after that, we end up having ISM manufacturing PMIs for the United States. So that's ended up being a little bit better than expected overall. But initial jobless claims came out, and it was 232,000 compared to the 248. So that kind of gave a reason. It kind of gave a little bit of a spark and a little bit of a pop up for the United States dollar. But we'll take a look at how everything's kind of playing itself out, and then kind of look at that. Now, because this is the first Friday, typically you end up seeing non-farm payroll on this one. Plus, obviously, because we're going to end up having Labor Day going up this week, I'm pretty sure we're probably not going to see that much movement. So keep this in mind. This will probably be one of those days that um, non-farm payroll, especially because the trading has been kind of light this week. This may end up being one of those movements to where you may end up getting kind of shocked or based off of how much of a movement that you may end up getting, or it may end up being just a quick and wet fart, meaning that it may end up making a big move to the upside, big move to the downside, stagnate, and then after that, slow down. And then after that, obviously, get ready for Tuesday's trading. Now, um, what I always suggest to people, if you have an automation system or anything else like that, and you can be able to turn off the system on certain days, um, I would probably end up looking at being able to turn off the system a little bit later on tomorrow and definitely on Monday, so you don't get caught in a whole bunch of that consolidation. And also, don't think that there's going to end up being a great big move that may end up happening. I think it may just be more of a flash in the pan on Monday, and then after that, you probably may see some actual movement based off of what's happening with the market. So I'm going to go over some of the pairs that we end up talking about. I know I briefly did a video earlier this morning. It was a quick 5 minute video based off of the positions that we were talking about previously, and not necessarily much of anything to be able to get into. It's just something to be able to pay attention to. So let's see what happened right there. Okay, so US 30. End up talking about this one earlier, and end up saying my exact statement was this: I felt like if the market was going to end up pushing to the downside, I had a little bit of a ways to be able to drop, but there really wasn't that much of movement to be able to take that I would be interested in because it's starting to get blocked off by the major consolidation that is actually starting to form up based off of this uh, large scale consolidation that we end up seeing in this movement in early June. So I wasn't necessarily interested in being able to sell, but I did say that if you were looking to be able to scalp or looking to be able to buy back, you possibly could get one of those opportunities to where it kind of happens sometimes where you end up seeing the market falls from a vortex and one day goes into consolidation, basically retraces back up to that movement. And if you would have caught that movement, quite frankly, you would have made the same amount of pips or same amount of points that you would have based off of what you end up doing off of the previous trade that we end up taking on, I think that was Wednesday. So there it goes. If you end up taking a trade based off of the idea, um, type it to me or anything else like that. Obviously, people might be end up watching us. Hold on, give me a second. Okay. Okay. It's okay, bro. Okay, but yeah, it ended up making the exact same movement, pushing right back up to the top. So, um, depending on how you end up playing it, you could have went for the sale, tried to run your trail stop right behind it, and see if you could have got something out of it, or could have bought it back up to the upside and kind of made that movement. Now, I outlined the plan, but I did not make a buy trade based off of that. I still think that the market is considerably bearish. And sometimes when you end up looking at being able to make a move like that and you're not in front of the computer, kind of like where I was, sometimes it's not necessarily worth it. But the market ended up making a move. If you did get into that move based off of what I talked about in that brief video, congratulations to you. Obviously, you end up making the points off of that. Now, DAX, we end up getting into this trade. It fell all the way down to our take profit. End up getting out of it. Then from there, the market started to consolidate a little bit once again. And from that consolidation, if you take a look at it from a 15-minute standpoint, this was the first time that I actually ended up making a true consolidation box. So it failed. It failed and made that big movement that we ended up winning. Failed again, and then after that, it started to make the consolidation box from here to here, which is from this point to that point. So you had true consolidation. You had true um, you had true support, you had true resistance that you could be able to work off of. And when the market ended up breaking this medium volume node, in which I'm not going to call it a high volume node, but I can definitely say medium volume node. Once it ended up breaking this point, obviously you end up having that big pop up. But essentially, what they end up doing is basically starting the same move back to the upside, kind of like what US 30 ended up doing. So once again, if you end up getting into that trade, going back up to the upside, congratulations to you. I was just not one of those people. I know that typically the Thursday before non-farm payroll is definitely one of those days where the market is in consolidation. Sometimes those moves may not necessarily be worth it for us being able to make a entry on it. So I just decided not to be able to take a move off of it and kind of enjoy myself for today. Plus, I had a couple things that I had to be able to do. Um, now, Nas 100. Nas 100 was very fickle, and let me explain what I mean by that. Nas 100 had the biggest pop to the downside, and we end up talking about how this market could potentially fall all the way down to 12,030 um, after that first fall. And that's exactly what ended up happening. The market ended up falling down to that point, ended up hitting the trap profit point. Then after that, pop back up to the upside. And essentially, what it's doing is it's kind of doing the same thing once again, kind of like what US 30 is doing, where it end up filling out that whole position, where the market end up falling and possibly being able to make another push back up in this low volume node area. Um, Currently right now, I think my automation system ended up catching a sale. It was a couple points away from hitting the trap points. Got my eyes off of it, and then after that, actually ended up turning into a loss. Sometimes that happens, especially if you're by the computer and you're not necessarily paying attention to it. But actually ended up taking a loss off of this one, even though it should have been a profit. Got very close to hitting my actual trap profit point, but never actually truly got me out of the trade. So ain't no reason to sit up there lying about it. I took a loss on it, even though I was actually in a good position. Um, Now, XPX 500. XPX 500, basically, what it ended up doing was it basically ended up pushing back up to break even if you are still in this trade based off of a movement. We talked about this last night. This was one of the trades that we ended up getting into in the night session. And I said, based off of the counter trend line break, if there was a counter trend line break to be able to get into, uh-oh. Okay. I ended up saying if there was a counter trend line break to be able to get into based off of the 15 minute that I would look at being able to get into that order. We ended up taking that order, and my stop loss was 39.47. But I got kind of antsy because I started to see that the market was not breaking out of this overall box area that I'm showing right here, and because that did not happen, I ended up readjusting my stop loss personally to where I ended up getting out a little bit earlier at 39.40. I mean at 39.36, which was this overall high right here where the market ended up first breaking. And because of that, I ended up taking a loss on this pair. Even though I probably would have never been taken out, at least would have got me some partial profit. But I ended up taking a loss. I was fine with being able to take the loss because it kind of went back with what the vortex rules is. Either it breaks from that consolidation or it doesn't. If it goes back inside the consolidation, then you exit early. And if you end up doing that most of the time, what you'll end up finding out is, yeah, you may end up taking a small little loss, but um, that small loss will definitely not be non-comparable to the win that you end up getting where you have a risk reward factor of 3 to 4 or 5 when it comes down to a win like that. So end up getting out of that trade. Took a loss on that one. So overall, today was a loss of a day when it came down to most of the pairs. Um, Very small and minimal losses, but losses either way. And one of those things where you kind of bounce back and kind of get ready. But I'm not interested in being able to make a trade tomorrow unless there's just something that this. Sorry about that. I'm not interested in being able to make a trade tomorrow unless there's just something that just jumps out at me. And if it does, then after that, I kind of consider it. But um, it's really nothing to be able to take a look at from that overall move. Um, if you end up taking that buy based off of what I ended up talking about in the morning for is if the market basically U-turned and broke out, then you probably would have lost on the first trade. I'm sorry, give me a second, guys. You okay? You okay? Huh? Um, yeah. If you would have got in on the first time, you probably would end up taking a loss. If you would have got in on the second time, then possibly could end up making a profit off of it. But once again, Thursday before non-farm payroll, it's one of those days to where it's either you get into a pair, you like what you get, and you end up taking profit early, or you just not trade at all and just kind of move on from there. I was kind of in the midst of just saying, just move on. I still have some trades that was still out, but I ended up taking a loss on it. Speaking of taking a loss, end up taking a loss on Bitcoin. We ended up talking about this example last night as well. What ended up happening was that the market ended up placing us in a profit, fell all the way down, and actually ended up creating a new support at 19,560, which means that if you did not get into that pair, you end up getting stopped out, kind of like what I ended up doing. Now you have to be able to adjust your overall game plan. Now the actual entry in the movement now will end up being at 12,000, at 19,560, and then after that your stop loss will be above the point of control. Still going after the same position, still going after that same 18,000, but currently right now what you're doing at this shortening your overall play when it comes down to that move. So um, trying to get a little bit more of a sheer thing when it comes down to that. Now, because the market is in the middle of consolidation, there's really no move to be able to make on Bitcoin as of yet. All right, I'm gonna put the little one up. Everybody, give me a second. Okay, going upstairs. Going upstairs. Let's see. Uh-oh. We passed it up. There it is. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay. That's what it was. You feel better? All right, let's finish up real quick. Um, Bitcoin is still at a position to where it's seeing consolidation, so I wouldn't be interested in being able to take a trade now until it actually ends up breaking the support or the resistance. So I'm going to stay away from that. Same thing with Ethereum when it comes down to those moves. Um, so Ethereum, I was still in off of that. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up getting kicked out based off of what ended up happening with Bitcoin, but that was our play. We ended up getting placed inside of the trade. It bounced right back up. If I would have noticed right when the market ended up doing that, I probably would have took an early exit. But stop loss is above here, so we still have a chance of being able to ride this thing out. But it kind of makes the point where we end up getting in even more stronger based off of where it actually was. If you don't feel too comfortable with doing that, you might want to adjust it a little bit, but no, you actually end up falling directly at the support. So that'll be the area where if you're getting into the entry, that will be the area where the entry will end up being forced to sell. So currently right now, we take a look at all the pairs. Did not trade two of the pairs, took a loss on two. Did not trade US 30, traded DAX, took a loss, traded NAS, took a loss, traded XPX, won, and traded Bitcoin, took a loss. Ethereum, I'm still in, but currently I'm down, and everything else I'm kind of just waiting for. So I'm not interested in being able to take any trades tomorrow unless there's something that just happens perfectly from a position and just kind of riding it out based off of some of the pending orders that we already end up placing in. So um, I'm not going to do a session. I'm probably not going to end up doing a session in the morning. I'll probably just end up doing a session going back on Sunday. Still trying to get used to being able to take my son to school. But other than that, like always, plan your trade your plan. For the people that end up watching this, hopefully you end up having a good weekend. It was a winning week overall, which is always good. Um, and we always try to make sure that we can be able to win overall when it comes down to the week. But once again, another learning experience as you end up going through and being able to make the best possible trades that you possibly can based off of the settings that we end up getting. So, everybody, have a good week. I'll see y'all a little bit later on. Take it easy.